you can go ahead whenever you're ready, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. I wanted to say assalamu alaikum and good afternoon to everybody in the Boston area. It's a pleasure to be with you, alhamdulillah. Unfortunately, still unable to join you in person, but inshallah, sooner rather than later, we'll be able to enjoy each other's company once again, inshallah, and sharing in the masjid, inshallah, together. I know you guys are in great hands with Sheikh Abdurrahman, Ahmad. I know that he's a wonderful, mashallah, Imam and scholar, and so I'm very happy to be joining you today. Today is a very important day, and this conversation that we're having today, this session that we're having today, is something that's very important because the month that is coming to us in the lunar calendar, the month of Ramadan, is a month that is unlike any other month. It's a time that is unlike any other time. In Islam, we learn that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed in his ultimate wisdom certain times and certain places that have more blessing than other times and other places. So for example, everybody is aware that when a person goes to Masjid al-Haram in Mecca, when they pray in the Haram in Mecca, that their prayer is worth 100,000 times more than the prayer that they pray at home or any other place. And the reason why is because there's so much blessing that is present in the city of Mecca, in the Haram, in the masjid of the Kaaba in Mecca, and that is a very special place. It's designated as a special place. Okay. Similarly, Allah Ta'ala has placed certain barakah in the times that we have as well. Not just places, but times. We know that the day of Friday, every Friday is a very special day. The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ says that there is an hour that falls on each Friday in which any dua that is made is instantly accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The dua is answered. And some scholars have said that it's the time between Asr and Maghrib on the day of Friday. So that time is a very special time. The day is a very special day. Ramadan is a very special month. All of the 29 or 30 days of the month of Ramadan are filled with blessings and filled with opportunities for a person to come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to become a better person, and to free themselves from the impact of the diseases of the hearts and the sins that they have acquired in the previous 11 months. And it really is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that every year we have this opportunity, these 30 days, to refocus and to refine our souls and to clean up all of the residue and all of the dirt and all of the soot that has gathered within our souls for the previous 11 months. We know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained the act of fasting. Well, Allah ta'ala in the Quran, he says, "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون." Allah Ta'ala has prescribed this action as a prescription, literally kutiba, something that was written for something else. It was prescribed for you. Now we are used to the term prescription being a term that is medical in nature. When somebody has a prescription, it's usually for medication or some sort of treatment to help alleviate an ailment that they're experiencing. And this is the same kind of prescription. Fasting has been prescribed for you. Why? Because it's meant to cure you and to relieve you from the ailments that you're suffering from. And one thing that we fail to realize, by the way, is that every illness and every ailment that we have, it has symptoms. And every illness and ailment that we have, it has pain, it has discomfort associated with it. Whether now or later, there will be some negativity. So the ailments that we suffer from spiritually, whether they be envy or jealousy, backbiting, doubts in the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, lack of gratitude, stinginess, there's so many different ailments that are spiritual ailments, that are ailments of the heart. Those ailments, they bring pain, they bring symptoms and pain to our existence and our relationships with other people. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this practice of fasting as a means and as a prescription to help us rid ourselves of these ailments. And then he says, كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ, just as it was prescribed for those people who came before you. Because when anybody does a treatment, they want to know, that it works. And Allah Ta'ala, obviously it works. We know that it works, but it works. He wants us to be so confident in the fact that it works that Allah Ta'ala tells us this is something that all previous nations have had to do. All previous Asian nations of prophets have gone through some form of fasting. Why? Because it is such an essential part of spiritual health that it was mandated in even previous religions and previous scriptures from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Allah Ta'ala finishes the verse and he says, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, that the end of the treatment, that when you complete your treatment, the goal is that you gain this thing called taqwa. Now, what is taqwa? Taqwa, if we're going to be very, very simple in our definition, it's a very beautiful word, but it means something very simple, is that you act in a way that is pleasing to Allah when nobody is around. That is taqwa. Whether you are in public or whether you are in private, you act in a way that is pleasing to Allah. It doesn't matter if you're around people or not. Now, fasting is one of those things, it's one of those deeds that is very personal and it's so private. Like nobody knows that you're fasting except that you have to tell them that I'm fasting, right? Fasting is a deed that a person can easily violate. They can easily not be fasting and still pretend as if they're fasting. So it is a very personal thing. And because it's so private, because it's so personal, it's one of those deeds that instantly elevates a person to the status of a muttaqi, of someone who has taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Because a person could easily go and eat somewhere privately and quietly, and then they wouldn't feel the pain or the thirst in their stomach. But we don't do that. We never even think of that. We are embarrassed to even fathom that. Because why? Because we know that fasting is something that is between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is why Allah Ta'ala, He says, as-sawmu li wa ana ajzi bi, that fasting is for me and I'm going to reward according to it. Nobody knows the amount of reward that I have waiting for the people who are fasting. So fasting in Ramadan is a big deal. Okay? Fasting in Ramadan is a big deal. But Imam al-Ghazali teaches us something really awesome about fasting. And this benefits us in two ways. Number one is it makes sure that our fasting does not become robotic and does not become mundane and boring and all about food. And number two is Imam al-Ghazali gives us these tips because there are some people who can't fast. There might be a woman who is on her menstruation, her period. There might be a person who is unable to fast due to their health or age. There may be a person who is, in their has just delivered a child or is nursing, and that they are not able to fast because of that. So there are many people that aren't able to practice in the act of siyam from ta'am, from food, specifically from food and drink. And so they also wonder, like, what kind of fasting is in it for me? Am I just going to miss out on all of this? Am I just going to not have the same Ramadan as everybody else? At the same time, there are also people that the Prophet ﷺ said, he said that there are some people who go through Ramadan and all they experience is hunger and thirst. All they get is hunger and thirst. He said there are some people who pray in the night and all they experience is tiredness. All they get out of it is that they're exhausted. So there are different layers of fasting that Imam al-Ghazali, rahimahullah, that he gives us so that we make sure that we're not those people that are just wasting the Ramadan, that we're just wasting our month away. And even if we can't fast, we want to make sure that we are not those people that are simply, just trying to make it through the month while everyone around us is fasting. So what are the different things that Imam al-Ghazali tells us about? He says that fasting is practiced in three ways. Number one, he says, is the fasting of, is the normal fasting, the fasting of the everyday person. And he says this person, when they fast, they just stay away from food and drink, and they make sure that they don't break their fast. And they, they eat suhoor before Fajr, they eat their iftar at Maghrib, and that's pretty much it. And that's a big deal. But still at the same time, he says, this is the first level of fasting. And this is something that everybody should be able to do. Okay. Now he says the second level of fasting is a special kind of fasting. And this is something that should be done by those who are fasting as well as those who can't fast. He says that the second level of fasting is not just about food and drink, because there are people who, when they're fasting, they just sleep all day. They just sleep all day, or they keep themselves so occupied, or they eat so much food between Maghrib and Fajr that they barely feel any hunger throughout the day. So fasting from food and drink, surprisingly, is actually one of the easier things to do. He says the second level is fasting with different parts of your body, not just your stomach, right? He says, but fasting with your eyes. What does it mean to fast with your eyes? Well, he says it means that a person should be very cautious, even more so than the rest of the year, with what they look at and what they watch. What are the things that their eyes fall upon? Are those things pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not? And the obvious example are things that are just blatantly haram, like things that are immodest and things that are lewd and fahisha and things like that. But it also is about what we put our eyes on in terms of maybe even what we're reading. Are we reading things that are not beneficial for us? Are we reading things that are backbiting and gossip? Are we just constantly consuming with our eyes things that don't benefit us? Right? He also said then also fasting with your tongue, not speaking when you don't need to be speaking, not talking when you don't need to be talking, not saying things that could be, virtually take away the reward of your fast. The Prophet ﷺ said in a very powerful hadith, very short, but very powerful. He says, "Man samata naja," whoever is quiet, they will be saved. They will be saved. There is almost always, in every form of regret that a person has, there is almost always a regret of saying something. So if somebody got into an argument or a fight or a disagreement, they regret what they said. Very rarely does a person regret being quiet. There are times, but very rarely does a person regret being quiet. Maybe for every 99 times that we regret saying something, there's one time that we regret not saying something, right? So Imam al-Ghazali says, be careful what you say with your tongue. And by the way, this includes your thumbs. This includes your thumbs and your phones. Be careful what you say with your thumbs and your phones, as well as your tongue, right? The same thing. So fasting, he says, a person should not lie. They should not backbite, slander. They should not use bad language. They should not fight with somebody. They shouldn't be insincere. And they shouldn't just engage in pointless conversation. Rather, a person should try their best to be focused and to be remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is difficult to do when you're talking. It's difficult to do when you're constantly speaking. The third the third thing in the second level, right? So 2.c, he says, is fasting with your ears and being very careful not to listen to things that don't bring any benefit, especially things that are just downright harmful. Okay, so he mentions not listening to the conversations of people that are not beneficial, not listening to, things that can be detrimental to a person's spirituality, listening to backbiting and gossip and all that kind of stuff. Then, of course, we know the advent of music and podcasts and these things. It can be very dangerous for a person to spend their entire Ramadan, listening to music and podcasts, because then they have no chance to catch up on the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to listen to things that are beneficial to them. Okay? And so being careful with what we listen to and only trying to listen to good things. The next level, he says, is saving your hands and your feet from committing sins. These are things, by the way, these conversations Imam al-Ghazali is giving us, these are things we never thought about. And this is why he's talking about it, because he said, look, fasting is very easy to do from food and drink, but can you be a better person in the month of Ramadan? Can you actually graduate to become a better person? So he says, not going into not going to places that are bad for you, not doing things, not striking somebody, not using your hand and feet in a negative way. The next thing he says is not to overeat. And this is a very, very challenging one that I know we all struggle with, is not to overeat, not to fill your stomach with so much food and so much drink that you're unable to, for the rest of the night, you're unable to engage in any meaningful worship. Imam al-Ghazali, he advises people that when you break your fast, make sure that you control the desire of food, because Ramadan and fasting is about being able to control your desires. So if when Maghrib comes in and it's time for me to make my iftar, and break my fast, if I just eat 3 plates of food, then what desire have I controlled the entire day? What was the point of all that practice? Right? If I cannot deliver at the moment of Maghrib, when the restrictions have been lifted from me, then what was the point of the whole day? Right? So I challenge everybody. This is a very difficult one. I challenge everybody to test yourself and to work on not being the person that overeats to the point where you feel stuffed. It's difficult for you to sit comfortably, to even breathe sometimes. May Allah protect us. And to realize that you can still eat and drink, but you have to do it in a way that is responsible. Because Imam al-Ghazali mentions, and he says that many of us, we fill our plates and our tables like we are having a feast, and that there will never ever be any food for us to have ever again. He said, do not indulge in that kind of way. Okay. The next thing that he says is that when a person breaks their fast, that they should be thinking of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they should constantly be remembering Allah. And this is the 3rd level of fasting. Okay. So the 2nd level of fasting is a level that engages watching out what you do with your body. The 3rd level, Hinera, is a very special level, which is now, how do I think of Allah all the time? You know, many of us, when we fast, we're basically watching the clock for the end of the day. So Maghrib, here locally is going to be around 7:45, 8 p.m. And many of us were watching the clock all day long, and all we're thinking about is, man, I can't wait to break my fast. And, one of the jokes that people make is you should never go grocery shopping while fasting, because you're going to buy everything that you see that you are craving. You're going to buy every single thing that you see. And so the thing that Imam al-Ghazali is saying is, look, don't just control your food and drink. Don't just control your eyes and your ears and your mouth, but also try to control your heart. And try to think throughout the entirety of the day about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Try to think about 4 things. Number 1, think about what you're grateful for. Think about what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you, and just thank Allah for those things. Number 2, think about what your regrets are. Things that you regret, things that you wish you didn't do, things that about yourself that you wish were different. Maybe you have a bad temper and you wish that Allah ta'ala would give you patience. Maybe you're not as grateful as you wish you were, and you wish Allah ta'ala would give you contentment. Maybe you're not as generous as you want to be, and you wish Allah ta'ala would take away the love of dunya from your heart and the love of wealth from your heart. Maybe these are things. Think about the things that you regret, the deeds that you've done, and ask Allah ta'ala to change that about you. Number 3 is to think about your greatest hopes. What things do you want? What successes, what achievements do you wish for? Obviously starting with the akhirah, with the afterlife. Oh Allah, bring all of me and my family and my loved ones to Jannah. Oh Allah, don't leave a single one of us out. Could you imagine the pain? Could you imagine the disappointment that would be felt if your children didn't join you in paradise, or if you didn't join your family in paradise? That your wife and your kids made it, but you didn't. That your son and daughter made it, but you and your husband didn't. That your mom and dad made it, but you didn't make it. Your brother is there and you're on the other side. So that's one of your greatest hopes. Talk to Allah about that. And then, of course, also your hopes for this life as well. That you hope that your kids stay healthy, your family is safe and protected, that they achieve all of their hopes and dreams in life, that you have a home that's filled with laughter and love and joy, and not of tears and pain and loss, sorrow and loss. Talk to Allah about your hopes. And number 4 is your greatest fears. Talk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about your fears. The things that you wish would never come near you. The things that you wish you'd never have to experience. Those 4 things, your gratitude, your regrets, your hopes, and your fears, if we think about those things throughout the day and we briefly open our hands and pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and make dua to Him throughout the day, every prayer, Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, we add 4 or 5 minutes of just calling to Allah, then you will see that your Ramadan will not be about when is Maghrib, when is Iftar, what's for Iftar, chicken or beef, right? Like chutney or achar. Like it wouldn't be about all that. Your iftar is not your iftar is not going to dominate your day, but your remembrance of Allah Ta'ala will be the first and foremost. The thing that you think about will be only Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, and you'll see this dhikr and this remembrance in your heart start to make things different within you, right? And then by the end of the month, you'll realize, subhanAllah, that I wish I had more time. I wish I had more time to think about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala like this. But beautifully, you can always do this, and this is the time for us to practice it. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless everybody here. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us tawfiq and to give us success in this month of Ramadan. And that He allows us to become not just people who stay away from food and from drink, but we also achieve the highest levels of this month, and not just the bare minimum, but that we achieve the best that we can, and that we see this transformation within us. Jazakumullah khairan, everybody. I hope and pray that everybody is keeping safe and doing well up in the Northeast, and I hope and pray that you have a wonderful, inshallah, Ramadan. If we have any questions, inshallah, we can take any, on the Zoom here. Other than that, if we don't, then we can conclude before the next session, inshallah. Anybody? Any questions? I think no questions. Okay. Jazakumullah khairan. And inshallah, everybody, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your session. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakumullah khair, Ustadh. Allah bless you and your family for making time for us today. It was a beautiful session, inshallah. So we're just waiting for Sheikh Abdurrahman to log on. He's finishing up Dhuhr, and then he'll be on shortly. So if you'd like to stay on and take a few-minute break, he'll be on in a few minutes, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair, Ustadh.
Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I just missed Ustadh Abdurrahman. Did he just leave? Oh.
Yeah, he just left.
Oh, okay.
Like 10 seconds, we missed you.
Oh, man. I was just trying to finish up with something. MashaAllah. How's everybody doing?
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Oh, man. What a nice warm day today to be outside. Bismillah. I drink water to show that I'm not fasting. طيب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين صلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. I'm just gonna go and close that door so we don't get disturbed. طيب Bismillah. How many of you, by this raise of hand, by the show of hand, inshallah, how many of you attended one of my previous workshops on the fiqh of Ramadan? Just a quick, I just wanted to see how many of you have taken it before, mashallah. I see one. Okay. That's it. Okay. Just one. Okay. Okay. I see 2, 3. Good. All right. All right. 3 is good for a jama'ah. It's good. You can even do Jum'ah Salah, mashallah. So that's a good group. I think 3. All right. طيب, Bismillah. So since it's going to be the first time for some of you, I have been using the same PowerPoint presentation for the past, I would say, like 3 years. So I will use the same, inshallah, PowerPoint. Pretty much the same thing. It's just a reminder. And it's good to keep reminding ourselves certain things. They come, perhaps maybe we go over them just once a year. But in general, it's good to know the rulings. You might pick up a thing or two, something new, inshallah. So that will be helpful. So inshallah, let's get started. This should take around an hour or so. So I will just go through the presentation. I won't keep the Q&A till the end. It would just make it, I think, more interactive if we did any comment or questions during the session. So please feel free to, if you have any questions or anything that you want to share, please go ahead and raise your hand, unmute yourself. You can speak or just type your question or your comment in the text message, inshallah, in the text box, in the message box. So let's see if I have the, let me just pull up the Allah ya Kareem. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Okay, Ya Rabb. Share. Where did it go? I'm not able to open up the window. Where did it go? Okay, let me see if it's here. Allahu Akbar Kabira. Okay, yep. طيب. Bismillah. So, oh, no, I don't want to share. I want to present. There you go. طيب. So, I'm not sure what Abdurrahman Murphy talked about today. But I'm sure he had done a great job in elevating our state, our faith, our enthusiasm for starting the month of Ramadan from a spiritual perspective. And inshallah, we hope that we take some lessons away, and inshallah, we apply those to our Ramadan. طيب. So can you see my screen? Can you see the presentation? Anyone? Is anybody there? I can't see who's raising the hand. So let me see. Okay, perfect. طيب. So we're going to talk about Ramadan, the fiqh of Ramadan, and what to expect, inshallah, from this class is the rulings all about fasting of the aspects of Ramadan 2021 and what you need to know, and then some rulings and the summary of what we're going to learn, inshallah, towards the end. So again, if you have any questions, if you have anything to mention, please feel free to. We want to have this a more interactive, because I am not seeing anyone. So I would like, if you have any questions, please feel free to jump in at any time. So the fasting of Ramadan is fard, is an obligatory act. It's one of the pillars of Islam, right? As Jibreel alayhi salam, when he asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, tell me about Islam, that was the question he asked, and he said that you say ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, you pray 5 times, you fast the month of Ramadan, you pay your charity or zakah, animal charity, and you perform hajj if you are able to do so. So that's Islam. It's one of the 5 pillars of Islam, and it can only be fard if it's mentioned in the Quran or a mutawatir hadith. Okay, I won't go into what does the second one mean, but one of the things, it has to be from the source should be the Quranic verse that indicates that this particular act is fard. Although we have the hadith that says that these are the 5 pillars of Islam. However, what makes it absolute obligatory, it could be, someone could say that, okay, the 5 pillars of Islam, okay, there are recommended things to do. You don't have to be a proper Muslim to do those 5 things. So what makes it obligatory, absolute? So that has to be a very strong evidence, and that would be first thing, it should be from the Quran. So here's the verse from the Quran, from Surah Baqarah. We all obviously hear this ayah, especially in our khutbahs in Ramadan and before Ramadan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Baqarah, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu kutiba alaykum as-siyamu kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. Right? O you who believe, fasting has been obligated upon you. So kutiba, this word, kutiba alaykum as-siyam, fasting had been obligated or prescribed to you, just like it was prescribed to the people before you, so you may gain taqwa, piety. So kutiba is the word that indicates that it is fard. It's an obligatory act, and one must do it. So if it's such an important act, then it means that it has a lot more to just fasting, right? There are rulings to it, what makes it necessary, at what point it becomes obligatory, who has to fast but doesn't have to fast that particular day, can delay it later on, so on and so forth. So all those rulings, and that's why the scholars, they have written books on fasting, or a portion of their major books talks just about that. So it's an obligatory to perform the current Ramadan, the Ramadan that you're in, as well as any makeup fasting. So it's a general rule that if there's anything that becomes an obligation, if anything becomes obligatory upon you, becomes important, then you should do it. And if you're not able to, you have to make it up later on. That applies to Hajj, that applies to fasting, that applies to prayers, that applies to your zakah. All of those fara'id, all the fara'id of Islam, all the fara'id of our deen, if you did not do it at a certain time, at a given time, then you are obligated to make it up later on. If you missed your salahs for the past whatever day or two or a year or so, it just doesn't go away. It's not like bad credit, right? It stays on your record, not just for 7 years, but it goes for until you live. So basically, you should make up any of those obligations that you missed in the past, or for whatever reason you were not able to do so. So you should make up those fasts. So that's why the month of Sha'ban was the month to make up any previous fasts. So that's the obligation of the fast. However, the scholars have identified or kind of explained what siyam is, because kutiba alaykum as-siyam, fasting, even people in the health sector also, they talk about fasting, of not eating and drinking, or just refraining from certain types of foods or drinks, and staying in a state of fasting for a certain amount of time. So there are different types of fasting. And when the Quran says kutiba alaykum as-siyam, it has an alif lam on it, and that indicates that it's a definite one. It's not indefinite. It's not vague. It's a specific fasting that the Quran is referring to. So what type of fast is it referring to? That applies to these conditions will apply. So A, refraining from engaging in sexual activity. B, refraining from entering anything into the body cavity, right? Anything down the throat, the GI, all the way to the stomach. And this would be whether deliberately or accidentally. I will come just right back to this one just in a bit. Number D, from the time the sun begins to rise, right? That will be the break of dawn. That will be the break of dawn, because that's when it begins to rise, but it doesn't rise at that point. From the time the sun begins to rise to the time to the time the sun sets, right? And that should be E, accompanied with the intention of fasting. Without intention, your fasting will not be valid. And it has to be from individuals who are permitted to fast. So, so we will talk a little bit about the rest of them, inshallah, in detail later on. But here we have whether deliberately or accidentally, right? If you know that you are fasting and you deliberately or accidentally, like you know that you're fasting and you took water and splashed on your face very hard that it went down your throat, right? Or you knew you were fasting, you remembered you were fasting, and you started to gargle. You shouldn't, but you did. The water went down the throat. It will break the fast. So, so you have to refrain from eating and drinking or anything entering the body cavity, which means the stomach, via the GI, and it should be whether it's deliberately or accidentally. I hope that's clear, because a lot of time people say, oh, if it's accidentally, then it doesn't count. So here, accidentally meaning that you remember that you were fasting, and then while you were just rinsing your mouth, accidentally water went down your throat. It will break the fast. As opposed to someone didn't remember they were fasting, took a water bottle, saw a water bottle, Bismillah, drank some water. Oh, I'm fasting. So that does not break the fast. That does not break the fast. So it has to be deliberately, meaning that you remember you were fasting. You remember you were fasting. It was accident. It was deliberately, but it was in a state that you didn't remember that you were fasting. Accidentally, you didn't remember you were fasting, and you made wudu and you started to gargle, and you didn't remember you were fasting, and you gargle, water went down. Fasting is still valid. So anything that goes down without you remembering that you were fasting, that would not break your fast. Tayyib? Okay, so let's go into the conditions that rendered obligatory. So these conditions would make something fard. Now there's two things you have to keep in mind, and we'll talk about both of them. One is when it becomes fard upon someone. And the number two, is it obligatory to do and execute this particular action, in our case, the fast, at this moment, or can this person delay it for later on? Or does he have to delay it for later on? So basically three conditions, three different types. Number one, who has to, right? When does it become obligatory? Who are not required to fast, right? Number one. Number two, who are required to fast, but they can delay it. They're not required to do it now at this point, right? As opposed to the first one. They are required to, but they can delay it, like a fasting, a traveler or a sick person. Number three, a person has to delay it, is required, right? Is required, but that person cannot fast at this point. He's not from the second category, the third category. So this will apply to females in the state of menstruation or postnatal bleeding, after the blood that comes after birth. So after birth, then nifas. So hayd and nifas. They are required to fast. However, they cannot fast. They have to delay it for later on. So these three categories, if you just keep that in mind, the rest will become very easy to understand. So who are required to fast? We're talking about the first one. A Muslim, a person who's sane, who's mature, and who has the knowledge that it's an obligation, who knows that it is an obligation to fast. A new Muslim who just accepted Islam over the internet saw Islam and said, "Oh, I want to say the Shahada, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah," and that person thought that, "Oh, that's it. I entered Islam and I'm good to go." Of course, that person is definitely entering into Jannah, but that person is required to learn what are the essentials of Islam, and that's why we teaching our kids the essentials of Islam. A very good book, I think, even is very good for adults, new Muslims, newcomers, people who are coming back to the Deen. It has all the necessary knowledge of purification and prayer. So likewise, you have to know that salat is fard, yes, fasting is fard, but somehow this person, because he never met a Muslim, didn't know, right? And just accepted Islam, didn't have the knowledge. So that person is not required to fast. If that person didn't fast the entire month of Ramadan, after Ramadan, oh, we had to fast, it's okay. That person does not have to. So 4 of these things need to apply to a person. The person has to be Muslim, has to be sane, right? So an insane person will not be required to fast. A kafir, a non-believer, is not required to fast. So if the converts who accept Islam, like my parents and many others, perhaps from our community, perhaps someone here as well, the years prior to your Islam, you were not required to, because you're from the first category, right? You're sane, you're Muslim, and mature. So kids, they're not required to fast. However, can they fast? Yes, of course. Will they get the reward? Yes, of course. And also the parents will get the reward, but they're not required. They're not, they do not fall into the category of who are obligated to fast. So that's shurut, right? Shurutul iftirad. Of course, then we talked about the knowledge. So these 4 things have to apply to make it fard to begin with. So once you have these 4 down, then we go to the category of the conditions that make it obligatory to fast the Ramadan are to be free from ill health, right? So if someone, so this is who is required to, we're going to go to the second category, who is required to fast but not required to fast at the moment, right? So the first of Ramadan on Tuesday, if someone is sick, ill health, is he required to fast? No, not now. But does he fall into the 4 other categories? So those 4 conditions, the first category, the 4 conditions, do they apply to that person? Is he a Muslim? Is he sane? Is he mature? Does he have knowledge? Yes. So it means it became fard, but he's not required to fast on Tuesday. If the whole month passes and he's still ill, doesn't have to fast. He can make it up later on. If he's not able to make it up later on, then we will talk about that. That person needs to give fidya, the amount of sadaqat al-fitr per fast. So ill, to be a resident. A traveler is not required to fast while traveling. Initially, those 4 conditions apply, it became fard. However, he's not required to fast at the moment. But can he fast? Yes, of course. Postnatal bleeding. These, the number 3 and 4, postnatal bleeding, menstrual periods, these last 2, they are required to fast. However, they're not able to fast, so they will not fast. So they are the 3rd category that I mentioned. The 3rd category that they cannot, even if they want to fast, they cannot. SubhanAllah, it's a mandatory, sick leave, right? Sometimes most of the times you have optional sick leave days, and then you have mandatory sick leave days from Allah. So this is something that Allah had made it easy for the women, gave them that break so they don't fast on those days, and they will make it up later on after the month of Ramadan. All right. Okay. So certain things we talked about, in the definition, in that list that we mentioned, right? Accompanied with the intention of fasting, right? That's part of the definition. So what are the conditions that stipulate, that validate the fasting? So once it becomes fard, you are from one of those three categories. It became fard, you have to fast. Now, what will make that fast valid, right? There are certain conditions you have to meet to make it valid, right? It already became an obligation. Now, how are you going to execute it? There are certain conditions you have to meet to make it acceptable and valid. Number one, you have to have intention. To be free from anything that it is contrary to fasting, menstrual periods, postnatal bleeding. So that we already talked about that. That person, they're from the third category. They're required to fast, but they cannot fast, right? Because this is saying that that make it valid. So if you are in this second part over here, if you are in this condition, then it would not be valid. To be free from all things that break the fast, meaning that you should not be eating, you should not be drinking, or engaging in any other acts that contrary to the fast. So to be free from all of that, it will make it valid. All right. So we will now talk a lot more about number 3, to be free from things that break the fast. Okay. People exempt from fasting, right? The second category, people are required to fast, but they're not required to fast that particular day. They can fast later on. That will be a sick person, a pregnant nursing woman, and a person who is traveling. So these are the 3 categories that a person in these conditions are not required to fast that particular day. So we will talk about each one, the sick and the pregnant nursing woman, and a person who's traveling. These 3 categories are those people who are exempt, meaning they have to fast. If they want to fast, go for it, because they're from the second category. It is obligated upon them. They meet the first 4 conditions, but they are not required to fast that particular day of Ramadan. They can make it up later on. So these 3 categories will go into details. We take one by one. So sickness, what is the definition of sickness? How sick a person should be or could be, where it makes it feasible or permissible for him to leave the fast and not fast and take the compensation that Allah has given. So what is sickness? The sickness has to be confirmed by a pious Muslim doctor. Pious Muslim doctor. This is the general notion that the fuqaha make for the definition of how to determine someone is sick, right? So number one, they have to be pious, right? Because a person who's not pious, who commits sins in the past, his statement would not be valid. So the person has to be, of character. Has to be a Muslim, because a non-Muslim will not know the details of fasting, how important it is, and what is the detail about sickness that will apply to a person that will make it a valid reason for him not to fast. Of course, it has to be a doctor, right? You cannot just go to a mechanic and say, "Can I not fast?" So it has to be a doctor. However, the contemporary scholars, and I will also agree with that nowadays, because of how medicine and how the doctors come to a conclusion with, normally it's, it could be their own personal opinion, but a lot of times they also take advice from other doctors, and it's a very standard procedure for their recommendation, or whatever their diagnosis might be. So in that case, if it's a reliable doctor and you told the doctor what exactly fasting is, how we fast and how important it is for Muslims, for us. And this doctor is a reliable doctor, good doctor, he knows what he's talking about. If he, if this doctor, even if he's non-Muslim, but through his experience and all the other things that we mentioned, if he says that you should not fast, he could take his opinion. He could take his opinion. Yes. So that's the contemporary scholars. Not all, but many scholars take that position. However, some of the Shafi'i scholars and also Hanafis as well, they are still strict on this particular, especially if it's a Muslim country where Muslim doctors are available. However, even those scholars say that if you are in a place where you cannot find a Muslim doctor, right, then you have no other choice except to take whoever doctor. But if you have your own doctor who's not Muslim, it's best to take a second opinion from a Muslim doctor, just to make sure that you're on a safe side. Okay, so that sickness has to be confirmed by a doctor. If such a pious Muslim doctor feels that one's medical condition will be aggravated, prolonged, it will worsen the case or just make it too long by fasting, then one is exempt from fasting. Then you can delay your fast and not fast that particular day or days and make it up later on after the month of Ramadan. I hope so far so good. So far so good. Bismillah. If anyone could keep an eye on the messages or the other comments that people might put in, because it's hard for me to put up the messages there. It just kind of comes in my way. So if someone just give me a heads up that there's a message or there's a comment, okay, inshallah. All right, let's move on. Sickness. Two types of sickness: temporary and permanent. So temporary sickness, one is expected to recover from the sickness in the foreseeable future, in the near future, right? Make up one fast for each missed fast day. A permanent sickness, this person is obligated. However, one is not expected to ever recover from this sickness. Then that person will have to make up. Now, this person obviously cannot fast, right? Because it's a kind of a sickness that will last forever, perpetual, or for a very long time, and there's very little chances that he will get better. So in this case, you'll pay fidya, as I mentioned before, and fidya is money of sadaqat al-fitr. It's equivalent to one fidya. Like one fidya per fasting is equivalent to the money of sadaqat al-fitr, which is in our case $10. So $10 per day for a sick person who is not going to recover. A lot of people think that, you missed a day, you give kafara. That's true. You give fidya, not kafara, fidya. That's true. But that's not in the Hanafi fiqh. In the Hanafi fiqh, there is no fidya. I believe it's in the Hanbali and the Shafi'i school that if someone misses a fast of Ramadan, has to give fidya and also make up a day. But that's not the opinion of the Hanafi school. Hanafi school is straightforward. Either you make up the day. If you cannot make up a day for whatever reason, the prolonged sickness or not expecting to get better, then you just straightforward give fidya. However, if this sick person gets better later on, right? A miracle happens. Someone, mashallah, went for Umrah, Hajj, made dua. Mashallah, Tawqir went for Hajj, made dua for him over there. Got better. Then that person has to now make up the fast, because fidya is a substitute for the fasting. So once the original comes back, substitute will not be needed. However, that will be a regular sadaqah and it will not go to waste, but that person will be required to make up that fast. Okay, so if someone already gave us fidya because there were the circumstances was that the person should give sadaqat al-fitr per fasting, and a person gave the fidya, and this person later on got better, this person has to now make up those fasts. I hope this part is clear, inshallah. All right, so we completed this part. The sick person who's expected to, not fast, or perhaps maybe fast if that person can, but however not required to fast that day, make it up later on. The second one, it was the pregnant or nursing woman, because they have also a circumstance or a situation where it becomes difficult for them to fast. So what is the ruling? If she fears that fasting would be harmful to her or the child, then that mom can delay her fasting until after Ramadan. She does not have to give fidya. She will just make it up later on, whenever. There was a question that came in that, mashallah, this person had 4 children right after the other. So, and it's been 4 years she couldn't fast, because each Ramadan she was breastfeeding her child. And so, subhanAllah, she has to make up 120 days. So that's a lot of days. However, she has the whole year, the coming years, inshallah. But it's good to put that in your will if you have a lot of fast, just in case, put that in a will that, if I pass on to the next world and I'm not able to have this many salah, this many fasting, give this much fidya on my behalf. And that will be taken out from 1/3 of the wiratha, from 1/3 of the inheritance. All right. So the traveler will, the person who's traveling, must be traveling for at least 50 miles distance. And that person is intending not to stay anywhere for more than 15 days, for 15 days or more. A person who's traveling, number one, for 50 miles or more, not intending to stay anywhere for 15 days or more, that person becomes a traveler, and a traveler is excused from fasting. Meaning that if a traveler does want to fast, just like a sick or a pregnant or a nursing woman, they can fast, but they're not required to. It becomes fard upon them because they meet, again, I'll keep reminding the 3 categories. They meet the first category of the 4 conditions that we mentioned. They are Muslim, they are sane, they have the knowledge of fasting, and they are mature. They have to fast. However, they're not required to fast if they're traveling. However, they will make it up later on. But a traveler can fast. And nowadays, if it's easy to fast while you're traveling, you should do so. All right. So we will spend a little time on what are the things that invalidate the fast, and this is what most people are interested in. They want to know. They want to know what are the things that break the fast, what are the things that don't break the fast. So, in short, anything that passes through your GI down the throat to your stomach, that will invalidate your fast. So water, any liquid, food, any type of food, any type of grain will break the fast. Or anything, even if it's non-edible, if you swallow it down, it will break the fast. So that's pretty much, or a person engages in sexual act, that will break the fast. So that's anything that is contrary to the fast, it will break the fast. So now, once something happens that break the fast, there are 2 types. One that requires you to only make up that day and no fidya, right? Just like we mentioned before. Or it will require you to make up a day, plus there is a heavy fine, if you may, which is called a kafara, an expiation, will also apply, and that would be fasting 60 days, or feeding 60 poor people, and so on and so forth. So one of those options will apply. طيب. All right. Yes, inshallah, we'll talk about the vaccination. It's very simple, straightforward. We will get to that, inshallah. It's all coming. I was just looking at the questions. طيب. So the two types, one that only requires you to make up one day, or requires you to make up a day, and also a kafara, an expiation. So what are those things? That acts that invalidate the fast and require a makeup along with an expiation. Let me put that down. Only relate to the current Ramadan fast. So one of those things happen in Ramadan. Outside of Ramadan, it will not apply. By one's own free will, one person deliberately does it, right? Without a valid reason. So if three of these conditions apply, then it will invalidate the fast, requiring a makeup and expiation. Makeup and expiation. The following acts invalidate the fast and require a makeup along with an expiation. Number one, eating or drinking something that humans would normally consume. And this consumption, nourishment, nourishes, medicates, or pleases the body in some way. So, in other words, that thing that a person eats or drinks, it has to be from the category of food or medicine. Okay? Nourishment, medication, or pleasure. Okay? You know, for survival, people will eat insects, right? Right? So eating an insect is not one of those three categories. Or swallowing a rock. It's not a rock, a small pebble, a small, stone, or dirt. So those are the things that normally people will not consume, and it's not for nourishment, it's not for medication, it's not for pleasure. So if a person knowingly, intentionally, in the current Ramadan, with the person's own free will, and without any reason does it, it's fine. So number two, actual sexual intercourse, regardless if one ejaculates or not. So these two things, eating or drinking or sexual act, will nullify the fast. If it's the current Ramadan, it's by one's own free will, and it's without any valid reason. Of course, sexual intercourse, there is no room for a valid reason. However, food and drink could be for a valid reason. A person got sick, he needs to take medication. So there you go. You don't have to. It does not mandate an expiation. It will definitely break the fast, but it's not going to mandate an expiation. Okay, so if someone is not feeling well and a person has to break the fast, there's a hila, there's a way out, that a person consumes something that is not medication, it's not for nourishment, food or drink, and it's not for pleasure. Swallow something, take a piece of leaf or grass, and swallow it, and that will break the fast because it's done intentionally. However, this is not to say that someone should do that just because he wants to break the fast. It's just becoming hard. But in any case, if someone is just adamant that I want to break my fast, I don't care. Let that person take that route, because it would just make it obligatory upon him to make up one fast. Otherwise, if he starts drinking, then he has to make up that day and also fast another 60 days, which is a little tough. However, this we don't advocate for this opinion or for this hila. It's just a tip. طيب. All right. What is expiation? Right? Fast 60 days, feed 60 poor people. So if a person is not able to fast, it's not an option. You have to fast 60 days, 2 months, 30 days, 60 days in a row without anything in between. It has to be 60 days in a row. If a person is not able to do that, then a person can feed 60 poor people, feed one poor person for 60 days, or give 60 poor people, or one poor person the amount of sadaqat al-fitr, right? That's fine. You can give sadaqat al-fitr amount, or you can give them food. So nowadays you can just give cash. So if a person is not able to fast 60 days, right, and it has to be a valid reason not to fast. A person cannot say that, oh, it's hard, how I want to fast 60 days. There's that hadith of the Sahabi where he came to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, I did love with my wife in Ramadan while I'm fasting. What should I do? The Prophet ﷺ said that fast 60 days. He said 60 days. I couldn't do, with one day. You want me to fast 60 days? The Prophet ﷺ said that, okay, give sadaqat al-fitr. Give charity, feed 60 people. And he said, I'm a poor person. I don't have food to feed myself and my family. How am I going to feed 60 people? The Prophet ﷺ said that just take a basket of fruits or food and just give it away. He said, well, I can do that, but I think I'm the poorest person in Medina. The Prophet ﷺ said, you go ahead and eat it yourself, have it for yourself. So he took it and he had that basket for himself. He ate the food himself, the fidya. So that was a particular, an isolated scenario. It was very specific for this Sahabi that the Prophet ﷺ gave this permission to him. However, the ijma' of the ummah, the scholars, the consensus of the scholars is that the expiation has to be done if a person breaks the fast intentionally without any valid reason. طيب. So that's expiation. Okay, so we're done with the first category. The second category, where it will break the fast, it is sinful. So we are talking about the fiqhi part. We're not talking about the spiritual aspect. If a person breaks the fast intentionally, the wa'id and the things that the hadith talk about, that we're not going to talk about that. We're talking about just from a pure fiqhi perspective. So what will require someone to make up, or what are the things that break the fast? So different parts of the body, we'll talk about each one of them separately. So the mouth and the throat, entering or drinking accidentally while remembering the fast. So we talked about that, right? Accidentally while remembering. So a person, while rinsing the mouth or washing the face, jumped in a swimming pool, whatever reason, person he knew or she knew that it's Ramadan, fasting, and still does it, and then the water goes down the throat, then that will break the fast, and that person is required to do a makeup, but not an expiation. Eating or drinking because one thought Maghrib entered, but Maghrib did not. Okay? If you break the fast even a minute before the time, then that fasting is not valid. You have to make up that day. However, there's no expiation. Eating or drinking because one doubted the Fajr entered, but Fajr really did enter. So in that case, the fasting will not be valid because it's contrary to the core definition of fasting, that is from the break of dawn. So if a person does eat after the break of dawn thinking that Fajr didn't enter, it will not be valid. However, this person is excused and he only has to make up that day. Eating or drinking forgetfully and then thereafter thinking that the fast broke, and then starts drinking and eating again. So, however, if someone didn't remember fasting and then took some water, Bismillah, alhamdulillah, and then, oh, I'm fasting. Oh, I broke my fast. Oh, well, now it's going to drink the whole bottle. That will definitely break the fast. However, the first one did not break the fast because that was accidentally, without remembering fasting. However, the second time when I drank, it was purposefully. It was while remembering while I was fasting. However, this one will not require an expiation. It's because of not knowing, not having the knowledge, right? Thinking that it breaks the fast. But if someone knew that it doesn't break the fast and still drink, oh, he's in trouble. Then he has to do 60 days. Okay, and what else? Swallowing what is between the teeth. On the condition that the size is of a chickpea. So something big was in the mouth. And then after suhoor, after a person came for Fajr Salat, there was something in the mouth. It was big enough, and then the person swallows it. Then that would break the fast. However, a person is not required to make up that day. Swallowing a pebble or other item that people wouldn't typically eat, right? So we talked about that in where an expiation also becomes mandatory, that it should be of nourishment. It should be something that people usually consume. However, if someone does actually swallow a pebble willingly, intentionally, knowing that a person is fasting, it would break the fast. However, no expiation. Swallowing water by accident when gargling for wudu or ghusl, while remembering the person is fasting. So we already talked about that. Swallowing blood that exists from the gums, right? That will break the fast. Swallowing toothpaste or mouthwash, right? It will break the fast. Deliberately swallowing vomit that reaches a mouthful, right? So vomiting itself does not break the fast. Just want to make that clear. I'll say it again. Vomiting does not break the fast. Some people think that, oh, I broke the fast. No, it doesn't break the fast. It does not. Even if it's mouthful, even if it's a whole lot of stuff came out, all your suhoor came out, even with the iftar from the previous day, doesn't break the fast. Doesn't matter how much came out. Doesn't matter. However, the only place it will become problematic if a person deliberately vomits. Then if it's a mouthful, it will break the fast. Okay. So deliberately vomiting a mouthful. Okay. So that's where deliberately vomiting, that's covered. Vomiting and thereafter thinking that the fast is broken and then deliberately vomit. So of course it will break the fast. Smoke that enters the throat by one's doing on the condition, let me move this away. On the condition one's body doesn't benefit from it, right? So I don't know, smoking, I'm not sure what the scholars have said about it. Of course they did, but I don't see an ijma on if someone actually does smoke, would it would definitely break the fast, that's for sure. But would it also require an expiation or not? However, any type of smoke that you inhale, it will break the fast. If smoke just goes into the body, and we will talk about that later in the end, if accidentally or something that you cannot avoid, like dust or smoke out there where you're working or something like that, if it goes into if you breathe it in, it should be fine. It's totally fine. It shouldn't break the fast, and you are okay, inshallah. So that's what the fuqaha have mentioned, that unintentionally, an unavoidable smoke or dust that you inhale will not break the fast. However, if someone deliberately goes to a place where people are smoking, or someone is smoking, and right, or you burn something right there in front of you, and you're inhaling the smoke, right? They burn bakhur and stuff like that, or incense. So you have to be careful. If you want to burn it, keep it a little distance so you're not inhaling it directly. Smoke in the air a little bit, that's fine, but you should not inhale it directly from the incense or the bakhur pot. Kissing that causes one to ejaculate on the condition one did not swallow the other's saliva. So swallowing your partner's saliva, it's kind of a critical thing. It's for adults, of course. So swallowing your partner's saliva will break the fast. And it will also require expiation. It will require expiation. So that's important to know. Okay. Allahu Akbar. Okay, the private part, engaging in sexual intercourse because one still thinks it's Fajr, right? Just like food, engaging in sexual intercourse forgetfully, thinking that it is time for Maghrib, entering a suppository into the anus, right, or break the fast because it's lubricated and it will enter the stomach, entering something dry into the anus and it completely disappears inside the body, entering something wet or oiled into the anus, even if it does not completely disappear inside of the body. Okay, entering a wet tissue or a wet piece of cotton into the vagina, even if it does not completely disappear inside of the body, that will break the fast. Entering a dry tissue or a dry piece of cotton into the vagina, and it is completely inserted inside of the body without any part remaining outside. Pouring water or oil into the anus, and it reaches the distance of the mihqana, okay, inside the pouring water or oil into the vagina, and it reaches the distance of the mihqana. All right. So I just wanted to read that. طيب. The nose. Water used to clean the nose or wudu or ghusl, in wudu or ghusl, reaches the throat, right? Like we mentioned before. Inhaling medicine into the nostrils, inhaling smoke by one's doing, on the condition one's body doesn't benefit from it. So inhalers will break the fast. What do you call those? Steamers, where you take steam, that will also break the fast. If someone has to have a steamer or an equipment that is used for that, some people who have breathing issues and they have to have that machine on while they're sleeping, that will also break the fast. So if they cannot do without that, then they're excused. Of course, they're excused from fasting. So all those things will apply. Yeah. The body in general, touching that causes one to ejaculate, right? That will break the fast. Applying medicine. If a person has a wet dream while sleeping, that does not break the fast. But because a person is doing it while awake and by his or her own action, and then ejaculate, then that will break the fast. Applying medicine to an open abdomen or head wound and it reaches the stomach or the brain, right? So this is the underlying ruling, that anything that will reach the stomach or the brain will nullify the fast. So that's according to the Hanafi fiqh, that's the principle, that anything that reaches the brain or the stomach, then it will break the fast. All right. Okay. Now let's go to, you will also get the answers of those questions for flu shots and other things. Eating or drinking something forgetfully, right? Doesn't break the fast. Eating what is between the teeth and it's less than the size of a chickpea. So if it's something very small between the teeth, it will not break the fast. However, If someone takes something smaller than a chickpea from outside and then puts it in the mouth and swallows it, that will break the fast. That will break the fast. So this is only, the condition is that the person eats from between the teeth that is already inside the mouth. And this is why, because it's just hard to avoid. A person might not remember fasting and kind of dig in, or something, might swallow it, or might remember fasting but unintentionally swallow it. So it doesn't break the fast if it's very small. It has to be something big. Chewing on a sesame seed without swallowing it. So that's the example of taking something from outside and putting it in your mouth. If it's very little, and if you chew it and it disappears in your mouth and you don't, it's not there anymore, and then you swallow the saliva, that saliva will not break the fast. Okay? Dust or smoke, including smoke from oud, incense, entering one's throat without one's doing, right? We already talked about that. A person burning something somewhere and that smoke enters into your nostrils, or you breathe it in, it will not break the fast. A mosquito, fly, or any object entering one's throat without one's doing, because these are things that is hard to avoid. Swallowing the wetness that remains after washing one's mouth. So normally when you make wudu, you rinse your mouth, even if you're fasting. But after you have taken out all the excess water, there's still something of that water in your mouth. That's fine. It doesn't break the fast. You can continue without have to spit out that. Swallowing one's 1 or 2 drops of sweat or tears entering the mouth and mixes with one's saliva, on the condition that one cannot taste its saltiness. Okay? Because these are the things that go into the mouth and disappear. Using an inhaler for someone who has asthma, yes, it will break the fast. Inhalers do break the fast. So if someone had asthma or any other breathing condition and a person has to use one of those inhalers, it will break the fast. Yes, that's correct. طيب. I still see a lot of questions about the vaccines. Okay, let's get to it. Any type of vaccines. Hold on. Where is it? Is it coming up? Let's see if it's there somewhere. There we go. The body in general. Rubbing oil or cream on the body or hair, applying deodorant, performing a bath, and finding its coolness, right, after the shower, doesn't break the fast. Withdrawing blood or even giving blood doesn't break the fast, like blood test. Blood cupping will not break the fast. However, don't do it. If you're fasting, don't do hijama. Although it doesn't break the fast, but you might have to break the fast after, because a lot of times when people take hijama, they feel dizziness, and sometimes people faint, right? Depending on everyone is different. Even if you're healthy and you're strong, I've seen also strong people faint. I almost fainted once. I did it in Ramadan by mistake. I went on my bike to go and give blood, and on the way back, I was feeling really lightheaded, and I almost fell off the bike. So I just had to stop and rest for a little bit, and then I biked back home. That was a silly thing to do. However, it's so normally what they give you something to drink after that, but some people actually faint. In that case, they have to give you something, because a person cannot actually pass, right? So it becomes very dangerous. However, blood cupping does not break the fast. Flu shots, insulin, any type of IV will not break the fast. So there you go. One line. Doesn't break the fast. All vaccines, any type of vaccine, you can go ahead and take it during Ramadan. Go ahead. If you have to do it, go ahead and do it. it doesn't nullify the fasting. The also people ask about many questions about, plucking hair from the body. Does that break the fast? No, it doesn't, right? But because once we know what are the things that break the fast, anything other than that will be fine. Putting oil on, any type of cream, any type of lotion, injecting anything in the body, even if someone takes injections for, energy injections, that's also valid and it doesn't break the fast. However, it will be disliked to do so. It will be disliked to take energy shots, inject ones. The drink ones, it will break the fast. But something that you inject in your body for nourishment, for better health or whatever, for whatever reason, it would not break the fast. All right. So I hope that summarizes everything. Hopefully, inshallah. So I'll just stop here. And any questions or comments other than vaccines? Okay, we already talked about that. Yeah. So if a person, the question is that if, normally after the second shot or even after the first shot, a lot of people report that they get sick after the first shot or maybe the second shot. However, if the person got really sick and becomes very difficult to fast, then that person is allowed to take medication or take any other supplement or something. If a person feels sick, really sick, and becomes very difficult to fast, and a person thinks that he cannot fast or she cannot fast and may faint or may get even worse, the sickness might worsen, right? We talked about the sickness. Where is the sickness? Let's go back and take a quick look at it. Sickness, right? Temporary sickness. Professional, right? So there we go. Yeah, has to be confirmed, right? If the doctor says, oh, you know what, you have to break your fast. Okay. So once the doctor says that you should break your fast and take medication or take some food and something like that, then you can break your fast, and there's no problem with that. You just have to make it up later on after Ramadan. Yeah. Good question, actually. Any other questions? I already answered all the questions here. If there are no other questions, inshallah, then maybe we should close. However, inshallah, in the upcoming Saturdays, every Saturday at this time between 2 and 3, inshallah, I'll be available. We will have a Zoom meeting. For anyone have any questions, inshallah, we'll answer those questions. Yes, hair clipping, hair cutting, any type of hair removal is permissible during fasting. It's totally permissible. Yes. So inshallah, we will continue. There's one more question. Yeah, I answered that question. That if you're having a second dose of COVID, and you might get sick, if your doctor say that you should not be fasting that day when you take your shot, then you can not fast that particular day when you take your shot and make it up later on. If the doctor says that you should not fast and it might cause harm, might get sick or even prolong the sickness that may occur, then in that case you can leave that day. You can take a leave that day, not fast, and take your shot, and make it up later on after Ramadan. Yes. طيب. If that's all the questions, inshallah we'll. But yes, just like I said before, that inshallah every Saturday between 2 and 3 we'll have this session, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Sister Dr. Nilufa. To get, have healthy food. Allah says, "Ya ayyuhan nasu kulu mimma fil ardi halalan tayyiba." We go to the halal part often a lot, and we normally neglect the tayyib part, wholesome, especially in Ramadan. Especially in Ramadan, we try to change a little bit of our diet, have a little, fiber, add more protein, minerals to our, take, vitamins is important. I always make sure that I take vitamins in Ramadan every day, just to get those extra minerals in the body. Vegetables are very important. Vegetables and fruits. Things that have fiber in it, and not too much starch. Carbs, not too much carbs, right, Dr. Nilofer? Yeah, choose good food for suhoor and iftar. In between, if you want to snack a little bit, yeah, of course. Yeah, proteins from lentils, yeah, beans, then meat. Yeah, very good point. Pure and clean food, yes. Now, Tayyib, barakallahu feekum. Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming and for your questions that you asked, and mashallah, a lot of us benefit, or your comments. May Allah bless you all, inshallah. Hope to see you next Saturday, and inshallah we'll continue to do this every Saturday. Barakallahu feekum. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to enter the month of Ramadan in the best of state, in the best of state of iman and faith, in the best of state of our physical well-being, inshallah, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts our good deeds, accepts all of our offering, accepts our a'mal. Even if you're not taking very healthy food, make sure your spiritual health is strong, right? If you really want to have pakoras and samosas for your iftar, go for it. There's no harm in it. Inshallah, Allah will accept your fasting and all of your ibadah. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept all the Muslims around the world for their offerings, inshallah, in Ramadan, and also accept all of the good deeds of those who are not able to fast this Ramadan. There are many people who are sick, people who are not able to, for whatever reason, not able to fast. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it easy for them, give them afiyah, give them shifa, make it easy for them, and reward them for not being able to fast, just like they were fasting in the past. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Wa jazakumullahu khair. Big thank you to Brother Imran and Brother Amar and all of those who facilitate all of our programs and our online programs in particular. May Allah bless you all. May Allah reward you all. May Allah preserve you all and protect you from all calamities and trials and tribulations. And may Allah put barakah in your time and your effort and your family. Barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalam. Also, Brother Taqir.
And Taqir and all the crew, mashallah.
Jazakallah khair.
Taqir is going to make dua for us when he goes for Hajj, inshallah, or Umrah.
Inshallah.
Who knows when that's going to be, Sheikh?